welcome everyone, and we will run through a little presentation here. It's good to save the questions to the end because we may have some part of the presentation that will answer what you have, but we'll have plenty of time at the end for your questions. So as you all know, the way that we are getting around Seattle is changing. We are a growing city, and in some ways we're growing the infrastructure and development to help us become what we already are. Over the next 5 years, we have a massive amount of public and private construction that is going to change the way that Seattle operates forever. The first thing that we have that we're here to talk and focus on primarily today is the viaduct is closing forever on January 11th. Shortly after the tunnel opens, we are closing the downtown Seattle Transit Tunnel to buses. It will become a light rail only facility. We're going to take down the viaduct to make way for the new waterfront, which we have to construct over the next handful of years. And we are completing Sound Transit 2, which is going to open up transportation opportunities for the region that we've never had before. We're entering a new normal. There's a new way of approaching our transportation. From now until 2022, there are going to be significant construction impacts due to the Key Arena redevelopment. The viaduct, as I said, is closing down on the 11th. The construction of the new Alaskan Way, which is going to complement the new tunnel and provide that replacement for the viaduct, is going to start early summer 2019, and it's going to continue through 2021. Tolling is going to begin on the tunnel probably at the end of the summer this year. That's going to change traffic patterns again. And then, as I mentioned, light rail is going to open to Northgate and to the east side in 2021 and 2023. So really the whole landscape of how you get around is changing. This is going to be a tough time, but it's all going to be worth it. We are going to have a spectacular waterfront that is going to be an international destination. You'll be able to go from the waterfront up to the Pike Place Market and then proceed up reinvigorated Pike and Pine to Capitol Hill. We're getting hockey. We're getting hockey in the next couple of years, and that's really exciting. And we're growing our light rail system and preparing for the third round of expansion of the light rail system. So we know that we need a City of Seattle-wide coordination strategy, which we have. This is a regional challenge that has required us to partner with all of our regional transportation agencies, and we want to use this time to encourage a permanent change in how people get around, a move away from single occupant vehicles, a move toward transit. So we have set up here at the City of Seattle a series of subcabinets that focus on city operations, external outreach and access to services, external communications, and internal communications, where we are encouraging alternative work arrangements for City of Seattle employees. Almost every city department was involved, and the accountability is at the cabinet level directly to the mayor. So this isn't just an SDOT activity. This isn't just a transportation agency activity. This is something that involves the whole City of Seattle organization.
I'm Laura Newborn. I'm with WSDOT. Thank you all for coming. So let me give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about, which is the tunnel and what it takes to where we are in the process and where we're going from here. So the tunnel is, for the most part, done. I mean, we're waiting to open it. We have lots of little things to do in the tunnel still, but for the most part, it is able to receive traffic. The only problem is it doesn't have the connections on either end to make people go to and from. So it is not ready to drive in that sense, but inside the tunnel is. So what we have to do is close the viaduct for 3 weeks so we can literally take 99 off the viaduct and move it into the tunnel. It's a pretty intensive process, especially on the south end. Involves a lot of work. And the process really starts this Friday night when we close 2 well-used ramps, the ramps by the stadium. So the off-ramp that goes to Atlantic and the on-ramp, the northbound on-ramp that at Royal Brome. So both ramps that serve the stadiums, they serve I-90, they serve I-5. So it's a pretty big impact. There are about 23,000 cars, vehicles each day that use those ramps. So it's a very big impact. And it's really the start of the process of closing down the viaduct, which officially happens at 10 p.m. Friday night, January 11th. It's hard to believe we're here. Once we build all the connections and can open the tunnel, that's going to happen in early February. We can't give you an exact date because some of this work is weather dependent, and if all goes well, we'll be able to open right after our big grand opening celebration, which I'll tell you about in a second. And then the work begins to remove the viaduct. And unlike the King Dome, I don't know if you all were here when we blew up the King Dome, this is not going to happen that way. This is a surgical process where we have mobile work zones that we're going to move from 2 to 3 blocks at a time, all up and down Alaskan Way and through the viaduct till we take down 1.4 miles of road. And then the city comes in and starts building a new, beautiful Alaskan Way. I wanted to show you a website, actually, especially for this group. So if you could go to the website, is that the one we pulled up? No, yeah. Oops. Can we do it? Well, it doesn't matter if we can't. We can.
We'll make sure we get to it.
Okay. Well, we posted, today we posted, we have a number of in-language brochures and stuff that are available on the table for you to take. But also we have them posted on our website, and today we posted some new videos on getting around Seattle in both Spanish and Chinese on our website. So if you go to 99tunnel.com and scroll to the bottom, you can see our in-language information and hopefully tell people to go there to make it easier for them to understand, getting around. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have to close SR 99 for 3 weeks. Believe it or not, 99 as it exists today is actually a detour. So the road was built, this temporary road was built, this detour road was built to allow traffic to keep moving in Seattle during tunneling. Now we're at the end of that process, so we have to realign the roadway into the tunnel at both the south end and the north end. So there's a lot of work ahead. So when we close the viaduct will be from South Spokane Street to the south end of the Battery Street Tunnel. So for the 3 weeks that the viaduct is closed, the Battery Street Tunnel will remain open, and you can use the Western Avenue on and off ramps. Also, really important for traffic movement is Alaskan Way will be open along the waterfront. That's 2 lanes in each direction, and a pretty good way for people to get around if they have to drive. So then the fun comes. So then we open the tunnel, but before we open the tunnel, we have a party. And we have more than 43,000 people have signed up already for this party. There is a fun run in the morning of Saturday, February 2nd. That has a registration fee associated with it. But in the afternoon, everything is open to the public. So there's you can walk through the new tunnel, you can walk through the Battery Street Tunnel, you can walk on the viaduct. The city's throwing a big party on the viaduct. It's going to be a great day. I don't know if anybody was around when we took down the southern mile of the viaduct, and we had roller skaters and we had all kinds of stuff that was going on the viaduct in the rain, and it was a big, big turnout, right? So, and a lot of fun. So we are asking people to go to 99stepforward.com. That's the website, 99stepforward.com, to sign up so they can actually pick a slot to when they want to walk through the tunnel and do the viaduct, because we're trying to spread out folks who are visiting so we don't have a surge, and because we have a capacity limit in the tunnel. So if you would like to do that or like to pass that information along, please tell people to go to 99stepforward.com and sign up. And then Sunday, our final event is a bike ride. That's also a registration event, so there's a fee associated with that. And the fees help finance the cost of this big party, which is quite expensive, security and all those other concerns that we have. So it does cost a lot of money to put on an event like this. And then we have sponsors and we have registration fees that are helping with that. Then after the tunnel opens, as Heather mentioned, there's a whole new normal in Seattle. So the tunnel will open toll-free, very important, because it is really different to get around If you use 99 or get 299, especially getting 299 from in the city, really changes pretty radically. And because the entrances, the ramps go away in town and they stretch, in essence, down to the stadiums and up to Seattle Center. And it's gonna take people some time, I think, to get used to it. So we just yesterday released these 4 new videos that hopefully will be helpful for people to understand and visualize the changes ahead when the tunnel opens for how to get around. And as I mentioned, we posted those same videos in both Spanish and Chinese on 99tunnel.com, so you can access that as well. I should mention, and Heather mentioned tolling dates, not firm. The Washington State Transportation Commission, which is separate than WSDOT, set the tolls at anywhere between $1 and $2.25 with a good-to-go pass. It's $2 more without. There'll be a lot of communication on that later as we get closer, because tolling will not happen before the summer. So it depends on a lot of things, because there's a lot of construction, and because it's such a big change, WSDOT did not want to implement tolling immediately to give people some time to get used to the changes ahead. And afterwards, as we mentioned, we take down the viaduct. That will take 6 months. So by the summer tourist season, the waterfront's going to be way open. It's going to be incredible to see. Then it'll take about 2 years it's going to take to fill in the Battery Street Tunnel. So we have to remove all the equipment inside, all the systems inside, and then fill it up and seal it and all that. And the viaduct rubble is actually going to be used. The contractor is using the viaduct rubble as part of the fill for the Battery Street Tunnel. And then at the same time, we are working to raise, how Aurora goes into the Battery Street Tunnel right now. We're going to raise that and allow streets to cross over Aurora for the first time in more than 60 years. So that will create a little more accessibility in the north area as well. Is that it? I think so. Yes.
The City of Seattle has, for purposes of organization, identified 5 pillars that help us talk about the things that we are doing to help and support the traveling public through this change. The first is that we're going to monitor and manage our existing transportation system to make sure that it works as well as it can work. In addition, we're investing in transit and expanding access to transit through the good graces of Seattle voters and the Seattle Transportation Benefit District. In addition, we're working with major employers and with the press to reduce the number of drive-alone trips downtown. That's the piece that's really going to make a difference. Individual people are going to have to make an individual good choice. In addition, we're managing the public right-of-way as never before. We're pulling back the boundaries of certain construction projects to ensure that there is as much space for the traveling public as possible. In addition, we are working with our regional partners to make sure that we are communicating a consistent and coherent message to the public. It's important to note that safety remains SDOT's top priority. One of the things that causes congestion are collisions. So we want everybody to follow the rules, be predictable, slow down, take a deep breath, and everybody's going to be able to get around safely. As soon as we all start putting our own needs first, that's when collisions happen. That's what causes additional congestion. Education and enforcement, our partnerships with the Seattle Police Department are going to help enforce that. So the first pillar is monitoring and managing our transportation system. We have a 24/7 operation in our Transportation Operations Center. This is where we monitor all the traffic cameras and all of the sensors that measure traffic volumes. Metro staff will be on site to coordinate transit routing changes as necessary. We've added additional traffic cameras to make sure we have wide visibility. We've increased our incident response team. We now have 6 incident response teams that can respond to incidents to clear them quickly. And WSDOT is increasing active traffic management on I-5. Those are the signs on I-5 that change, the speed limit changes based on the congestion conditions. We're using real-time construction, bridge opening, railroad crossing, and travel time data by third-party agencies. So this includes folks like Waze and Google. So we're making sure that they have all of that information to provide the best possible instruction to the traveling public. We've also deployed, in addition to our normal dynamic message signs, we've deployed temporary dynamic message signs to share real-time information as you're driving. In addition, we're either have added or will add temporary transit lanes on Cherry, the West Seattle Bridge, Tracy Record, 4th Avenue South, and on Aurora. We're eliminating the eastbound contraflow lane on Seneca. It won't be necessary anymore. In addition, we're opening the transit and freight bypass between Alaskan Way and East Marginal Way. We affectionately refer to it as the little H for transit and freight. We're allowing all traffic to use southbound HOV lanes between Mercer and Corson. We're restricting on-street parking on key arterials. That's the visual that you see here. That's to ensure that transit has sufficient space to get around. And this is a particularly amazing one. We're expanding hours when key bridges do not open for mariners. This is permission we had to get from the U.S. Coast Guard, and it was a significant win for us. The second pillar is investing in transit. Maybe you've noticed, or maybe you haven't, because nobody drives on 3rd Avenue. We've expanded transit priorities on 3rd Avenue. We have added peak and shoulder period trips with the Seattle Transportation Benefit District. We're permitting free-floating bike share to improve first and last mile connections. We've issued permits for thousands of new bike share bicycles. We've identified and prepared staging areas for Metro's additional cover buses. The mayor's Orca Opportunity Program has provided Orca cards to every high school student in the city. We're also working with Metro to increase West Seattle water taxi service. We added an extra boat as well as additional access for the water taxi, so more parking and additional shuttle service, including Ride 2. We're also improving access for drivers, car share, ride share, and bike share there at the West Seattle dock.
Thanks, Heather. Again, I'm Bill Bryant. I'm Managing Director of King County Metro's Service Development. So one thing that I like to remind people of is that it's not only the areas that are currently served by the Alaskan Way Viaduct that are going to be impacted by this series of changes. Pretty much any bus or car trip coming into downtown can expect to have different conditions and probably more congested conditions. So I wanted to start with one of those impacts, which is to the family of metro routes that comes into downtown via Aurora Avenue. We expect those buses to be delayed due to construction activities around the North Portal that we heard from Laura about earlier. You can see the route numbers that are listed there. These are express and rapid ride routes that serve various North Seattle, Shoreline, and other neighborhoods. These, however, are the routes that are going to see the most obvious changes. The 12 routes that show on this slide are those that currently run on the viaduct and carry a total of about 30,000 riders per day from West Seattle, Des Moines, Burien, and other Southwest King County areas. These will, with the permanent viaduct closure, these routes will begin their transition to their new permanent routing to the newly rebuilt waterfront about 9 months to a year after the permanent viaduct closure period. But for this 3-week period, these routes will be on surface streets through SoDo. You can see that shown in yellow. These routes will use 4th Avenue South, and let's see, the next slide will show, I think, the larger SoDo routing. but we're talking about approximately 40 to 50 buses per peak hour during the rush hour. So in order to help keep these buses moving and to help keep other buses moving, SDOT, the state, and Metro have come up with a number of transit priority measures. Heather touched on those a little bit earlier. But we also will be putting out about 20 standby or cover buses that are extra buses and drivers stationed around the downtown area and ready to fill in trips on any bus route in the system, essentially. We do expect that most of those buses are likely to be used on these 12 routes, but these buses will be able to be dispatched to any route in the system. This shows the routing all the way through SoDo down to Spokane Street. And you can see that the northbound or inbound to downtown routing is different from the outbound or away from downtown routing. And also that in the outbound direction, there are two alternatives. And Metro expects to be able to very quickly and dynamically shift between those two routings based on actual congestion conditions. That should have minimal negative impacts to our riders because there are no bus stops in that area in SoDo that will be missed with either alternative routing. We think that the darker color, the dark orange route, will likely be the best, most congestion-free route in the afternoon, for example. Heather also mentioned the water taxi. Metro will essentially be doubling water taxi service. This is going to be a great option from West Seattle. We also will be doubling service on the two shuttle bus routes that we operate via a contractor from throughout West Seattle to the Seacrest water taxi dock. These are routes 773 and 775. We also will be able to send standby buses to other Metro routes that serve West Seattle, so that will further potentially improve access to the water taxi. But basically we're trying to provide as many options to get people to the water taxi dock on the West Seattle end as possible. There should be a lot of capacity available on the water taxi.
So you heard me speak earlier about trying to reduce drive-alone trips downtown. We've engaged with Seattle's largest employers, 25 largest employers, to promote flexible work options, meaning people being able to come in a little bit early, leave late, perhaps work from home, maybe start your day checking your email at home and then come in a little bit later. This is really going to help us expand, sort of flatten the curve, expand the peak hour and reduce the number of vehicles trying to move through at that time. We're expanding the marketing and our pre-tax program of engagement for Metro Orca cards and supporting employer shuttles. Many large employers use shuttles to augment our regular transit service. We're providing support to them to have specified loading zones as well as using certain Metro stops in a way that won't impact Metro's use of those stops, because we really, transit's the way that's going to get us through all of this. Metro is funding WorkSmart consultations for flex work and carpool incentives through Commute Seattle. In addition, WSDOT is funding free SR 99 consultations through Commute Seattle. And all of us are expanding our employee flexibility in terms of how the thousands of SDOT, WSDOT, and King County Metro workers who come downtown can flex their work. There are about 7,000 City of Seattle employees who work in the downtown core. Most of them commute by bus or by carpool or by train. There are about 10% of those 7,000 employees who come in a single occupant vehicle. As a major employer, we want to make sure that we're reducing that volume, and so we are providing that encouragement to our employees. About 13% of total city workforce utilizes an alternative work arrangement. This is like a schedule where you work 4 days, 10 hours a day, and then don't come into work one day, or where you work 8 days, or 7 days in an 8-day period, and take that every other Friday or Monday off. And fewer people use telework. We're trying to increase the number of people who use an alternative work schedule, as well as increase the number of people who telework. Even for people who use transit as their primary transportation, this is going to free up space on the buses and on the roads for people who don't have that flexibility and don't have that choice. We're tracking all of those and expecting to see numbers of alternative work schedule usage increase over the next few weeks. Managing the public right-of-way, this is the one that's kind of dearest to my heart. We're working with contractors all throughout downtown Seattle to manage their construction project schedule. So every single project, every single taking of the right-of-way for project use has been scheduled. We have expedited permits to make sure that street restorations can happen before the closure happens. That way the streets are in really good shape. And we are modifying or revoking selected permits so that we're pulling back the boundaries of those construction projects to make more space for the traveling public. We're deploying uniformed police officers at key intersections that are important to transit flow so that we can maintain those access and movements. And we've launched a really cool e-cargo pilot project with the United Parcel Service, where they bring a container downtown with all the packages, and then they deliver them from an e-trike. They bicycle them around. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty cool. Our communications and outreach has been significant. We've conducted, by now it's way more than 100, it's probably close to 200 regional briefings, mostly joint briefings with my partners here since September. Seattle has a website with real-time corridor information at seattle.gov/traffic. King County Metro has a website at kingcounty.gov/getready, where you can learn about all of your transportation, particularly transit options, as well as transit rider impacts. We've distributed translated materials through community centers, libraries, daycare centers, and Seattle Public Schools. We've done significant translation work. We've developed some greenhouse gas themed call to action with the Office of Sustainability and Environment. We're really looking for that legacy change in travel behavior. And we engage with the media regularly. We have a plan B because it's always good to have something in your pocket in case what you planned doesn't work out. We have thresholds, including volume travel time and transit travel time, that'll trigger these additional actions. We can make more signal modifications. We can increase on-street parking restrictions. We can add additional transit-only lanes, and we can operate streets as transit-only. And we can do this pretty quickly. We can also reroute transit to less congested routes in partnership with King County Metro Transit. If doing more of our initial response doesn't work, we can work with Metro to modify I-5 ramp availability and signal timing. That's a big one. We can restrict turns at any street for signal occupant vehicles. We can expand transit priority access and restrictions, further decrease city employee travel for work and commute purposes, and modify, of course, our call to action to the public. I think as people see how this closure is going to impact their commutes, I think that's going to be the biggest learning. What we've seen from other closures is sometimes the first 2 days are, fine because everybody's a little bit nervous and they do a little bit extra to do something different. And then people get comfortable and sort of fall back into their old ways, and then traffic rears its ugly head. So we expect that's going to sort of rise and fall over the course of this closure.
This is as good a time as any for me to remind folks, and maybe not everybody's aware exactly how heavily Metro is used to get downtown and how heavily Sound Transit is used to get downtown. Right now, between King County Metro and Sound Transit, we're carrying about almost 50%, 48% at last count, of downtown Seattle area commuters that start work between 6 and 9 a.m. So that's a huge share. Fewer than 25% are driving cars. And as a result of that heavy transit use, we've been working hard to keep up with capacity needs. When we encounter situations like we're about to encounter where new riders are going to want to try transit, we're just going to ask that people be aware that it's going to be a little slower and more full than under normal conditions. And a lot of it is already very well used. So we just ask, especially new riders, to be patient with us. And by no means does this end with the end of the 3-week permanent viaduct closure. The next major transit change that you're going to see after that period will be the closure of the downtown Seattle Transit Tunnel to buses. For many years, the downtown tunnel under 3rd Avenue and under Pine Street has been planned to become a light rail only tunnel. And so that time is almost now. And this puts another large number of buses on surface streets that previously have been in the tunnel. We've been planning for this for a long time. Buses will be divided up between several north-south avenues in downtown Seattle, including a new route for transit on 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue. This will all go into place on March 23rd with closure of the bus tunnel. There are 7 routes and carrying roughly 15,000 riders per day that will be moving up to the surface at this time. At that time also, Metro will begin off-board fare collection for all routes that serve 3rd Avenue. 3rd Avenue is the main transit street through downtown. It's, as far as we know, the highest volume bus street in all of North America. And a key way to keep buses moving is to allow people to pay before they get on the bus and board the bus through any door. Anybody who's familiar with the rapid ride operations that we have on the existing 6 rapid ride lines has probably already experienced that, where bus stops either have stationary Orca readers, so Orca smart card readers, or at any stop, people who are carrying a transfer, whether it's a paper transfer or an Orca electronic transfer, are allowed to board through the rear doors. In most cases, this also means the middle doors of buses. You'll see that Metro buses more consistently have 3 sets of doors. So we will be implementing that as of the March service change on March 23rd. And initially, we'll probably have a lot of off-board fare collection achieved not through the permanent hardware that's mounted on the sidewalk, but through Metro staff that are carrying handheld card readers, as we do today at certain stations in the bus tunnel during rush hour. Over the following several months, you'll see the permanent equipment installed up and down 3rd Avenue. About half of the stops on 3rd already have that equipment, so what we're doing, along with SDOT, is filling in the gaps in that equipment at the bus stops that don't have it right now. 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue is going to be a brand new transit priority pathway beginning on March 23rd, primarily for peak-only routes. The routes are listed there. This allows 2nd, 3rd, and 4th to continue to function better. Even though with the addition of off-board fare payment on 3rd, we think that'll add capacity for about 30 buses an hour, which is significant. We still needed to find a new route for northbound buses to get through downtown. And that's a combination of 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue. It shows on the map. This will be mostly a priority transit corridor with transit-only lanes, or business access and transit lanes, which allow cars to turn right, but cars must turn right while buses can continue forward through intersections.
Because we know that the closure of the downtown Seattle Transit Tunnel to buses is going to add another layer of complexity to our changing transportation system, we have a number of interventions that we are planning to respond to that. So we're going to improve our real-time construction and traffic information that we provide to Google, Waze, and other map providers. We're piloting some additional urban goods delivery projects, and these are things that we're hoping can continue in the long term. This isn't just an intervention for these issues that we're facing. We're looking for these to be long term. We're encouraging and supporting Orca lift sales, as well as creating mobility hubs for first and last mile connections. Mobility hubs are locations where all the different modes come together in one spot to enable quick transfers. We're continuing, of course, our public engagement and awareness. And as Bill mentioned, we're adding off-board fare payment on 3rd Avenue, and we're building the new transit pathway on 5th and 6th Avenues. Because it wouldn't be a plan if we didn't have Plan B. We have additional work that we can do if those initial interventions don't work to mitigate the impact of 80 additional buses in the peak hour. We can add transit lanes, increase transit capacity, increase that HOV occupancy requirement on highways by working with WSDOT. We can limit access to downtown streets at certain times of day for non-HOV vehicles. We want to accelerate the launch of the Lake Union water taxi and speed implementation of projects from the Center City Bike Network. In addition, we could increase commercial parking tax for peak period. That's a pretty significant change that would require the city council to work with us on that. So it's something that we wouldn't undertake lightly. In addition, we can extend permit revocations for key corridors downtown. So hopefully that's given you a picture of all the things that your local governments are doing in order to make this better. We have a number of resources. We have seattle.gov/traffic, kingcounty.gov/getready, commuteseattle.com, Bertha Diggs, Realign 99, a number of ways that you can connect with what's happening. I think now we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, my name is Barakat Kiros. I am from Washington African Media Association, and also I am with the Coalition of Immigrant, Refugee, and Communities of Color. One of the things that I am interested as ethnic media provider is the fact that 85 to 90% shuttle drivers like Share Ride and Uber and Lyft and also taxi are from the immigrant communities.
Right.
And I drive myself on weekends for the short drive. I mean, what you put in a plan is great, but those people are the ones that are really affected, and there was no any communication in regard to that. Because when you put things on the plan and when you do it yourself, it's not the same. One of the things that, first of all, I want to mention a couple of things. 3rd Avenue, we should have been access to, red share cars. Because it's really difficult to drop a pickup for those people who work over there during these construction times. On the second part also, when you go up pike to make a left on 4th Avenue, you cannot. So, we have to drive around. So it creates another burden for the traffic shocking around that area. So I really like to see some improvement in regard to that. And also, for those, communities that I talked about, there was no any response from WSDOT and others to update them in real time what's going on, because they're going to get more tickets as usual, because those are the people who are affected by it. And it's a disappointment that you guys never made any attempt, to reach to them. On the second level, I just changed it 3 times my windshield, the rocks from the construction that's going on, and it's creating a lot of burden, and have to be something solution in regard to that.
So in terms of specific traffic concerns that you have about specific locations, let's talk separately about those. Right now, literally as we speak, there is a briefing just like this one for ride-hail drivers as well as taxi drivers. My deputy, Megan Shepard, is there presenting to them right now. So, and we have worked extensively with Uber, Lyft, and other ride-hail companies about how this is going, and we really do count on Uber and Lyft and all those folks to be communicating with their drivers, just like we expect any employer to communicate with their folks. Third Avenue is a route that we are protecting very specifically and very intentionally for transit service. So we don't want any ride-hail drivers to be either picking up or dropping off riders on Third Avenue. You need to do that around the corner, and we've reinforced that with a geofence, so people shouldn't be able to even hail a ride from Third Avenue. As far as the other concerns that you have that are sort of more specific in nature, let's talk afterwards about those ones.
Is it possible for, if these ride-hail companies don't work very well with the city on reducing some of this congestion, that they could be pulled too? That you could stop the ride-hailing for a while?
You know, there are lots of options that are available to us. We do find that ride-hail companies are particularly valuable to the system as first and last mile connections to transit, and that's really what we want to encourage. So, and they're a part of the system, whether, you know, however you feel about it, they're a part of the system, and lots of people.
What about scooters? Are we any closer to figuring out if we're going to get scooters?
The mayor's over here.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Anyone else?
Sharon Maeda with KBRU Radio. You mentioned it as one of the future plans about the rapid ride, and we're aware that the number 7 route is supposed to have a rapid ride. We really urge you to not make us go through the disaster we went through with number 42. Number 42, the light rail did not replace number 42 on MLK, and it was a disaster, especially for our immigrant elders. Now the number 7 bus, which I ride every day, is packed completely all the time now, and it would be great to have a rapid ride, but we can't have the same situation happen that happened with the light rail and number 42, where the stops were much less frequent and elders had to walk with their groceries for half a mile to get to a stop. It's not acceptable, and you need to include the community on the front end of that.
Yep, absolutely.
And we haven't heard anything except that there's going to be a rapid ride.
Right, and the estimated date for that at this point is 2024, I believe, which gives us a good amount of time to have a real discussion with the community. We have no intention of recreating the situation that occurred with Route 42.
Thank you.
G.
It has not yet been assigned a letter, but it's a high priority.
Madison?
Madison is G. And we've repeatedly seen that as we've converted super important routes like the Route 7 and the Route 15 and the Route 54 and 174 and others from regular Metro service to rapid ride, we've seen more and more people riding these routes, 50% or more ridership gains on these routes, and that's really what we're going to be trying to achieve. So we're not going to, through all the rapid ride projects, we'll be working hard to ensure the highest possible ridership and not alienating any riders.
Well, it's not about alienating, it's about the access. And if the stops, I've ridden the rapid ride only a few times because they're not in my neighborhood, but the ones that I've ridden, the stops are few and far between. And so what about the in-between stops? That's what I'm concerned about, and that's what the elders are most concerned about. And a lot of disabled, we have several disabled housing units in our neighborhood and all that.
So I just want to assure you, this is going to be a partnership between SDOT and Metro, and like Bill said, we have some years to make sure that we're planning this in absolutely the best possible way. We want to make sure that elders, immigrant and refugee communities have the best access to transit, And so we've learned a lot from previous lines, and we're going to bring those lessons forward and make sure that we involve the communities as to the absolute highest extent possible.
My name is Ali. I'm from the Wama, and also I'm Somali TV and Salali TV. And my question is, earlier you mentioned the downtown Seattle employees, more than 7,000 employees, they come every day. Same amount of people like that, they go to school, they come from the West Seattle period, they're using Alaskan Way Viaduct. That is fact for them very well when they go to school. Which if you go to UW, Seattle Central, all of them is there. Do you contact with the school and college, all of them? And also, do you tell them if this student be late, like where you contact with the employee on City of Seattle?
So absolutely. We have briefed student groups both at Seattle Central as well as South Seattle Community College. And we've communicated with the Seattle Public Schools as well as private schools in the region. How the schools respond to people being late because of traffic concerns is, that's a really good question to ask them, how they're going to respond to that. But we have made sure that everybody is well aware in the education community about what's happening and how that's going to be impacted.
Can I add something too, from a WSDOT perspective? It's not, I think people have to expect it's not going to be business as usual during the time the viaduct is closed. Everybody really does need to think about, allotting extra time to get to where they need to go, whether they go by bus or some other method. You heard Bill talk about how the buses are going to be crowded. That means there is potential to, have a bus go by if it's too full and can't pick up passengers. It's one of the reasons we have standby buses that are, ready and waiting. But I do think it's a really important message to get out to people that please plan, a lot extra time. Use some of the resources that are available to get a sense of traffic and other things, and bus crowding and things like that. So that's also important that people do take some initiative. And
So the other question is a different way, and like share, like Uber and Lyft. 70% employee drivers are the immigrant.
Right.
That's 70%. 50% of them they not speak English well.
Right.
Or whatever communication they get in English. Did you communicate it with Uber or Lyft, where the traffic systems change in the city of Seattle? Did you communicate that?
Of course. Yes.
Did they interpret their own language, or they put it on the spot someone can speak their language?
So I don't know what Uber and Lyft have done to communicate with their drivers. That's a good question for Uber and Lyft. But we have been highly engaged with Uber and Lyft and other ride-hail companies from the very beginning. They're an important part of our system. They're also they also add cars to the system. And so we want to make sure that those companies understand the impact that they have and the benefit that they provide. And we really lean on them to communicate with their employees and their contracted drivers. Yeah.
For the Seattle Metro bus, they have a lot of employees speaking their language. When we asked for the last night, a couple of nights ago, questions, they explained us more than the normal roads. We asked for what would happen when the people would come from the West Seattle or Bryant or go into the North Seattle. Usually they use Alaskan Way Viaduct, or what they do. They explain them how they go on one by one. So that would be a for the Metro bus.
No, absolutely. I do want to note that downtown Seattle is geographically interesting because it is very narrow. So your north and south choices are limited. You have the Alaskan Way Viaduct, Alaskan Way, Western, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I-5, right? It's very limited choices. And so we hesitate to give people directions about which choice they should make, because the moment that we tell people take 4th Avenue, everybody's going to take 4th Avenue and 4th Avenue will not function anymore. And so we really rely on people to have a knowledge of the system and to take some responsibility and some initiative themselves to sort of educate themselves and avail themselves of the corridor updates that we provide at seattle.gov/traffic and the updates that the King County Metro system provides for their buses.
So it's close to 11. Are there any other questions? Want to get a couple?
Yeah, the slide says you've engaged Seattle's top 25 employers. How many of them have committed to making any kinds of changes?
Many of them have committed to making changes. We have a delicate balance with our employers, and so our role as the Seattle Department of Transportation is to make sure that they have the information available to them. We have funded resources at Commute Seattle so that they can get advice and learn more about the choices that their employees have. We're leading by example, but many of the largest employers, already have significantly beneficial mode split percentages, and by providing these additional resources, they're going to be able to grow those. Hi.
Can you elaborate the toll-free period of the tunnel?
Yes, I can. Well, we don't have an exact start date. It won't be the earliest tolls will be implemented will be summer. Yeah, summer of next summer, and there will be plenty of communication. There's already lots of communications campaigns planned, and ad campaigns, and radio campaigns, and all kinds of stuff that WSDOT is planning, but we don't have an exact date. Mainly because there is such a big change happening when the tunnel opens in terms of adjusting to traffic, and because the viaduct is coming down, so there's changes there. The buses are coming out of the tunnel, so there's changes there, and so it's a pretty intense period for the next several months after the tunnel opens of stuff changing again. And we know that once tolls are implemented, things will change again, because there will be people that will not or cannot pay tolls. So we just want to really, we have a very extensive monitoring period and a monitoring system in place, actually, so to better understand sort of what happens to traffic after the tunnel opens at various points in time, and that'll all inform what we decide to do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have one last question, and then we're going to wrap up.
My name is Asai from Washington African Media Association. Actually, we have impact here about 10 different organizations, community-based ethnic media. And we appreciate really to invite us and just have a communicate with you. I know the impact is going to be next week, but it would be better future just ahead of time, so we can at least create awareness to our community. I know already Seattle is impacted with transportation issues, but in addition to this, actually is going to be a mess, I'm sure. Right. But is there any service, a free service or transportation in downtown area to minimize the impact? Is there, I don't know if I missed it.
You want to talk about the free waterfront?
Yeah, go ahead.
So WSDOT has helped fund a free shuttle along the waterfront. It goes from King Street Station to, and it doesn't go into downtown, but it travels all along the waterfront, through Pioneer Square and on the waterfront up to Seattle Center. So conceivably somebody could stop somewhere on the waterfront and then walk elsewhere in the city. And that's free. And yes, and we're going to announce some more information about that, actually expanded hours later this week, but it's available to anyone. Mm-hmm.
So I just want to remind you all that there's some materials over there that are in different language. And then also, if I have everyone's email address, if you all did RSVP, I'll send out a PDF of this deck to you all so that you have it. So you have a copy of the PDF as well. Okay? Okay, thank you all.